Okay, welcome back in. I'm now going to be reviewing Friday's action from the National Hockey League. There were only two games on tap, starting in Pittsburgh as the Penguins played host to the Winnipeg Jets. In the first period, just a minute and 22 seconds into the frame, Nito Niederreiter would kick things off, getting his eighth goal of the season unassisted, giving the Jets a 1-0 lead heading into the second period. In the second, Vladislav Nevestikov would increase the lead to 2-0, getting his sixth goal of the year, assisted by Ehlers, 4:53 of the second period. Gabriel Velarde would increase the lead to 3-0 with 59 seconds to go in the second, getting his eighth goal of the season, a power play goal from Connor and Josh Morrissey. In the third, Michael Bunting would finally get the Penguins on the board, getting his fourth goal of the season, a power play goal from Rust and Malkin, 5:49 of the third period. Now, late in the third, the Penguins would pull their goalie, but unfortunately, they were not able to score. Kyle Connor would get the empty netter, his 13th of the season, assisted by Perfetti and Mark Scheifele, and that goal happened with a minute and 11 seconds to go in the game. So the Jets would go on to win this by a final score of 4-1. The other game took place in Anaheim as the Ducks played host to the Buffalo Sabres. In the first period, Drew Helson would get his first goal of the season from Zegras and Carlson, 4 minutes and 2 seconds in the opening frame. In the second, Isaac Lundstrom would get his third of the year from Johnston and Zellweger, 14:07 of the second period, putting the Ducks on top 2-0. Alex Tuch would get credited for an own goal. For Tuch, that'd be his sixth goal of the season, cutting the lead to 2-1, and that goal happened with a minute 23 seconds to go in the second period. And just with 33 seconds to go, Jason Zucker would tie the game up, getting his fifth goal of the season from Power. As I said, in the second period, tying the game up at 2. There was no scoring in the third. We would need overtime to settle this one. And forgive me if I mispronounced the name. Yuri Kulich, I believe, would get the game-winning goal from Power, and Tuch with exactly 1 minute to go in the game. So despite the fact the Sabres were down 2-0, they were able to mount a comeback and win by a final score of 3-2. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the standings, as I do with the majority of my videos. Starting in the Atlantic on the top of the screen, you can see Toronto there in first place with a record of 12-6-2. They have 26 points. The Panthers are right on their tails, though. They are 12-7-1. They have 25 points. And rounding out the top three of the Atlantic is the other Florida team, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They are 10-6-2. They have 22 points. In the Metropolitan, towards the bottom of the screen, the Carolina Hurricanes are in first place with a record of 14-5-0. They have 28 points. The Devils are 13-7-2. They also have 28 points. And the Washington Capitals, despite the fact that they don't have Ovechkin, are in third place with a record of 13-5-1. They have 27 points, rounding out the top three. So 1 through 3 is only separated by 1 point. So if Washington happens to win their next game and say New Jersey and Carolina should lose, they could bump up to first place. It's that tight and that close. The two teams in the wild card look like this. The New York Rangers are 12-5-1. They have 25 points. So they're just 2 points back with Washington. So again, if they happen to win and say Washington loses, I think because the Rangers have a game in hand, if I'm not mistaken, they could bump into third place. But again, Washington would have to lose and the Rangers would have to win. So we'll see how that goes. And with their win this evening, the Sabres are back into a playoff spot. They have the number 2 wildcard spot as we speak with a record of 10-9-1, and they have 21 points. Rounding out the rest of the Eastern Conference, the Boston Bruins are 9-9-3. They also have 21 points, so really no big panic. Again, if they happen to win, say Saturday, they could easily bump back into a playoff spot. The Islanders are 7-8-5. They have 19 points, 2 points out. The Columbus Blue Jackets and the Detroit Red Wings are both 8-9-2. They have 18 points respectively. The Flyers also have 18 points with a record of 8-10-2. And the other Pennsylvania team also has 18 points with a record of 7-11-2. and 4. The Ottawa Senators are the second worst team in the East, but it's really not that big of a deal. They're 8-10-1. They're only 4 points back, so if they can win a couple of games, they could easily bump up into the standings. As a matter of fact, if they happen to win their next game and say Pittsburgh, Philly, Detroit, Columbus happen to not play or not win, they could bump up into that 5th spot easily and then only be a couple points out of a playoff spot. So there's really no panic right now if you're a Sens fan. But there is panic if you're a Montreal fan like me. They're 7-10-2. They have 16 points, 5 points out of a playoff spot. They have been off since Monday, so I'm sure it was nice to get rest, but this is the time of the year where teams start to separate themselves. I'm not saying Montreal should be in a playoff contention because they still are in a rebuild, but there was much higher expectations than being in last place for like the 4th straight year. So maybe Patrick Laine comes back and they go on a winning streak. Who knows? Okay, let's take a look at the Western Conference side of things. The Winnipeg Jets are still in first place in the Central Division with a record of 17-3-0. They have 34 points. Very impressive. The Minnesota Wild are 13-3-3. They have 29 points. And rounding out the top 3 of the Central Division are the Dallas Stars with a record of 12-6-0. They have 24 points. In the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights are back on top with a record of 12-6-2. They have 26 points. The Flames are just a point behind them, 11-6-3. They have 25 points. And the Kings are 10-7-3. They have 23 points. So 3 points are separating third to first place. Excuse me. The 2 teams in the wild card are the Colorado Avalanche. They have a record of 11-9-0. They have 22 points. And the Oilers are 10-9-2. They have 22 points. So if Edmonton happens to win tomorrow, or Saturday, I should say, and LA doesn't, then Edmonton could be back in the top 3 of that Pacific Division. But I'm sure they'll take this season at the start rather than last year, when I'm pretty sure right around this time they were in like dead last in the NHL. So a better start to this year, but still a lot of question marks moving forward. Okay, so rounding out the rest of the Western Conference, it looks like this. The Vancouver Canucks are 9-6-3. They have 21 points, but not that big of a deal because a win and say an Oilers or an Avalanche loss, and they can easily bump themselves back into a playoff spot. So there's really no panic. This is kind of right where the Canucks want to be. I'm sure they would love to be in first place, but being this close to a playoff spot, I would take that any day of the week. The Seattle Kraken are 10-9-1. They have 21 points as well. They're just a point out of a playoff spot. The Ducks are shockingly only 3 points out of a playoff spot. 8-8-3. They have 19 points. The St. Louis Blues are 9-11-1. They also have 19 points. The Utah Hockey Club and the San Jose Sharks both have 17 points, but Utah has one more win. They're 7-9-3. The Sharks are 6-11-5. And the 2 teams at the bottom of the National Hockey League are the Chicago Blackhawks. Not really a surprise. They're 7-12-1. They have 15 points. And the Nashville Predators, 6-11-3, 15 points. Very disappointing season. I know they're 17 plus 3. They're 20 games into their season, so they're technically about a quarter way through the year. There's just, I don't know. There were 7 points out of a playoff spot. I'll have to go on a little bit of a rant. I feel like I say this all the time whenever I go over the standings for the Nashville Predators, but just such high expectations going into this season, and what an absolute miserable start to the year. And because when you get someone like Stamkos and obviously Marchessault, both those guys have cup experience. I don't know if Stamkos has a Conn Smythe. I don't think he does because I think it was Hedman and Vasilevsky respectively. But then you get a Conn Smythe winner and Jonathan Marchessault coming over, both veterans, both have experience. You'd think that would help this squad, but for some reason it's just not gelling in Nashville. So 7 points out of a playoff spot, that means they would have to win 4 games in a row just to try to catch up to those respective teams. But let's be honest, between the Avalanche and the Oilers and the Canucks, and I'll throw this Kraken in there right now in the mix because they're only a point behind, but I don't see all 4 of those teams go on 4-game losing streaks respectively. And even if they did, you're telling me that the Ducks, the Blues, the Utah Hockey Club, the Sharks, the Blackhawks are also all going to go on 4-game losing streaks. So for Nashville, wouldn't be a huge hill to climb if they're trying to get back into the standings. But yeah, 7 points out when you're the last team in the Western Conference a quarter way through the year, it's not looking too good. I'm not gonna give up on them just yet, but man, it's very disappointing because I predicted they'd be in the top three of that Central Division. And let's take a look at who's the Dallas Stars. They have what, 24 points. So the Stars are already 9 points up on the Nashville Predators for that last spot in the Central Division. So it's not looking too good just yet. But I mean, maybe they pull a Blues miracle from like 5 years ago when they go on a crazy run. That's what they need to do if they want to get back into a playoff contention. But man, if you're in the bottom of the Western Conference, it's a huge hill to climb. So, anyways, that's enough about my rant about the Predators. Otherwise, I could just make an entire video about the Preds and how poor they are. But anyways, now we're all caught up on the NHL scores and standings. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.